is News Channel 5 at 6.
Tonight, it was just like loud screeching, and it was almost like a vehicle with the brakes on. But it was too late for brakes when floodwaters send a freight train crashing off the tracks. Elsewhere, roads are washed away, but nobody hurt after a night of very close calls.
I told my husband, I said, I thought that kiss I gave you this morning was the last one.
And the radar shows a break in the rain, but another night of dangerous downpours may be on the way.
I'm moving. I'm moving. I'm definitely moving.
Good evening, everyone. I'm David Beanick, sitting in for Tom Halleck, who has the night off. We begin tonight, as we have so often in the past few weeks, with reports of heavy rain and flooding. 1 week ago, you'll remember, it was Underhill, Vermont, where a wall of water washed away a neighborhood. Well, tonight it's several towns in northern New York, where the damage is dramatic. We have team coverage for you tonight, including the latest on when more rain may arrive. But first, let's begin with News Channel 5's Dawn Muller, live on the scene of a train wreck in Chesterfield, New York, directly across the lake from Burlington. Dawn, how's the cleanup going on that train wreck?
Well, David, you can actually see the train is still on the rails down here behind me. And I don't know if you can hear that sound. That's heavy machinery going down to the wrecking crews down there. They're trying to figure out a way that they can pick those rail cars up off of the railway. Now, this accident happened at about 1:30 this morning, and I don't think crews realized just how bad it was until the sun came up and they really got a good look at the damage.
Much of this 35-car Canadian Pacific train is now a mangled mass of twisted metal. At least 200 feet of the railroad tracks are completely gone.
The ground was super saturated with water and couldn't absorb anymore, and the force of the stream underneath and the water just finally caused the ground to give way.
The two engineers riding in the first car made it safely across the washout before the tracks gave out. 16 cars went down. Officials, worried about what was in them, evacuated nearby homes for several hours.
The train started coming our way, and all of a sudden we started hearing a lot of grinding and screeching, and at that point we really didn't know what had happened.
Not far away, the same stream destroyed a 30-foot chunk of Highlands Road, leaving several families stranded until rescue crews could bring them around a back road. And on nearby Lake Champlain, environmental workers are using giant booms to reel in 3,000 gallons of diesel fuel that the train spilled into the lake.
They're bringing it in slowly, and as they are, they're vacuuming off the diesel fuel, which is on top of the water.
Thatcher says any diesel that's left will evaporate off the water, so he doesn't anticipate any long-term problems. But one thing that will be around for a long time, stories of the night the train came crashing down.
I woke up for some reason, I still heard, really loud thunder, loudest I've ever heard, and then I had no idea it was a train wreck.
And right now, officials are estimating that it's going to take them until at least Tuesday to get this cleaned up. Now, this track is also an Amtrak passenger track. I've been told that Amtrak is busing passengers around until the track can be repaired. David?
All right, thank you very much. Dawn Muller reporting tonight from Chesterfield. And just when we thought we might get through this flood without
dozens of cars from a freight train that derailed early yesterday when flooding caused a trestle to collapse. But the heavy rain during the night made it even tougher for cleanup crews to reach the mangled cars that plunged more than 150 feet off the tracks.
The torrential downpours have greatly affected things, slowing everything down. Tractors and bulldozers are getting stuck in the mud, so it's greatly hampering things.
Crews hope to have the trestle replaced by the end of next week. And to the north, more trouble. The rains and mudslides literally wiped out the train station in Port Kent. The track's still there, but the ground below is gone. And meteorologist Gib Brown has kept an eye on the storm all day long. He joins us now in the Weather Center. Gib, emergency services expected water levels to be receding. How is it looking tonight?
Well, it looks pretty good right now. Things are drying out. Our problem, can you imagine filling this in 24 hours? Well, that's exactly what caused our problem in many communities. Over 5 inches of rain fell.
WCAX.com.
On the Channel 3 News tonight, severe weather brings a state of emergency. A train derailment caused by the weather results in a hazardous spill into Lake Champlain. A fire in South Burlington threatens an apartment complex. And broken equipment leads to health concerns and the shutdown of a municipal swimming pool.
And yet another round of thunderstorms fire up across the North Country.
And the Vermont Expos return home road-weary for a pair of New Jersey.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Will Michael, sitting in for Marcellus Parsons. Heavy rains are responsible for flooding, road closings, and washouts throughout our region. Clinton County and Essex County, New York, both under a state of emergency. The severe weather is also responsible for a train derailment. Some 3,000 gallons of diesel fuel are leaking into Lake Champlain as a result of the derailment. The accident is directly across the lake from Burlington in the hamlet of Port Douglas, New York. Jack Leduc is covering the story and has the latest.
Tons of tangled freight cars were swept down this 125-foot ravine early today when saturated soil gave way under the pressure of the train.
When they hit, it sounded like it hit a big puddle of water or something, and you could hear it go boom, boom, boom. That was it.
3 high-powered locomotives were hauling the 65 cars that made up the freight train. Luckily, there were no injuries.
2 locomotives made across the washout before the ground gave away. So 1 locomotive and the equivalent of 16 cars washed down the ravine into the stream.
The belly of a 3,000-gallon diesel fuel tank in the derailed engine split open on impact, sending toxic fuel into Lake Champlain.
We have crews out there on the lake now. Environmental Products and Services, one of the New York State DEC state contractors, and they're out there deploying containment boom. We've got about 1,600 feet that they're using right now to contain the product and draw it in.
The hazmat workers use rakes to collect as much of the fuel-contaminated debris as possible. But since the fuel was mixed with so much river water and the wind blew the fuel toward the shore, Wagner's feel the spill will amount to little more than a smelly nuisance. Before long, a specialized crew will be arriving to pick up the heavily damaged freight cars and rebuild the tracks of this $1 million train derailment. Jack Leduc, Channel 3 News in Port Douglas.
And road crews throughout northern New York are stretched thin. They are dealing with scores of washouts and plenty of closings from the sudden downpours. Worst hit was the area near Keysville. Roads and driveways have literally washed away. Emergency officials say some people are still stranded in rural areas. Fortunately, there are no reports of any serious injuries, but there have certainly been some close calls.
About 2 o'clock this morning, the road was just slightly flooded, and when we went over, the road washed out and the car got stuck. And it just went down from there. Now there's no way of getting it out without getting the front end lifted up. I was scared half to death.
The towns hardest hit include Sable, Altona, Beekmantown, Dannemora, and Moores, and a number of roads remain closed throughout Clinton and Essex counties. Flooding hazards have diminished a bit this afternoon, but as the rains continue, authorities are still reminding anyone driving in the areas to use extreme caution. The round of storms that blew through last night also causing damage in Rutland County, Vermont. The Edgewater Resort Motel on Lake Bomazeen in Castleton, that may have been the hardest hit there. Its roof was blown off, leaving...
Lightning struck a tree and then traveled underground before hitting their tent. 26-year-old Brian Staples from Bolton Landing died. 3 others suffered burns and other injuries. And the heavy rains that came with last night's thunderstorm are to blame for another disaster. A train wreck in Essex County dumped thousands of gallons of hazardous materials into Lake Champlain. 22 News Now's Taylor Burns has the story.
It happened around 1 this morning. This freight train headed south from Quebec went off the tracks when the ground gave way. This stream, normally not much bigger than a trickle of water, became so swollen that it weakened the hill that holds up the railroad.
The severe precipitation that's been in this area for the last few days, weeks, the ground has become super saturated with moisture, and it just couldn't take it anymore, and so the embankment gave way.
The only 2 passengers on the train, the conductor and the engineer, escaped injury. However, damage to the environment is a possibility.
The first 2 engines made it over the embankment safely, but the ground gave way underneath the 3rd locomotive, sending it and 16 cars crashing down the embankment. And that engine had 3,000 gallons of diesel fuel in the tank.
Hazmat workers temporarily evacuated all residents within half a mile, but most of the fuel washed downstream to Lake Champlain, just a few hundred yards away.
Most of it will evaporate rather quickly, and as we speak, it's being contained at the edge of the lake. and it's being vacuumed off right now.
As for this section of track that runs through Port Douglas, it'll be out of commission for several days, and a CP Rail official says it's too soon to estimate the cost of the damage.
It's much too early to try and put a dollar figure on this, just because of the fact that the rebuilding has not yet begun.
When it does, repair crews will work 24 hours a day to hopefully have the track rebuilt by next Tuesday. For 22 News Now in Chesterfield, I'm Taylor Burns.
Approximately 250 feet by 90 feet deep hole. Train 552 has 30 engines and uncertain cars in hole with some dangerous goods present. No dangerous goods spilled, diesel fuel leaking, diesel fuel being contained by a boom. Milepost A 148.55, 36-inch pipe culvert failing, 35-foot long, 7-foot deep, washout. Milepost A 147.3, approximately 50 feet deep by 80 feet long, washout, rushing water. Further track inspections are underway. A report from local authorities has provided info that a beaver dam well off railroad property failed and caused a heavy additional flow of water. The Track inspection, last track inspection in the area was Tuesday, June 23rd, 1998 by track foreman Charles Fink and trackman Roger Jacobs. Bob Conroy inspected 150.17 12-foot stone arch approximately 200 feet in length on March 16, 1998. Culvert was in good condition. The weather. National Weather Service forecasted heavy rain on June 25, 1998 in the Plattsburgh area. They also issued a flash flood warning at 11:51 p.m. Highs 83 and lows 66 degrees Fahrenheit. 3.21 inches of rain in the area within the last 12 to 24 hours. Please note engineering was not notified of weather warning. Progress report. Halter wrecking arrived at 1800 hours, assessing site assessment and set up for guessing. 22 air dumps en route, 14 air dumps by Ross's Point, work extra TXC 26 from Toronto at 2000 hours, Carsville to Plattsburgh. 6 empty air dumps in Toronto Yard, ABS to be lifted by TXE 26. 8 loaded air dumps en route by 4118-22. Order time out of Toronto Yard, 2000 hours. Skip.
150.10, we had a major slide that took place after the original washouts, and it is extremely wet in there such that we can't even get the machinery in. We buried a couple of bulldozers trying to get in there the first day. Right now we're putting rock drains into it to dewater the area, and we're using swamp mats to be able to get the excavators in there to do that. This takes a lot of time just moving the mats in and then moving the excavators around and getting the rock in.